Welcome in live to the finale of Bear and Balanced Season 2. And what a finale we have for you today. Not only are we going to talk about the 2022 Chicago Bears and put this season to rest, we're going to talk about the football team that has the number one pick. They are on the clock currently for the 2023 NFL Draft. We're going to give away one more Portillo's $100 gift card, and we are going to give out season-long awards. What more can you ask for?
That's a jam-packed show, and we're going to keep it nice and tight with our categories as always. But I think the coolest thing here is that the Portillo's, our last one. Man, it was fun giving away $100 a week. That was cool.
Yeah, I got the last two winners. Cards went out today.
Nice.
So you should get those, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday for one of them. That's on the East Coast. I don't know how long mail takes. Person in Illinois should get it soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, giving away cake shakes, Italian beef sandwiches. Can you, I don't know. I mean, charred Polish sausage.
Like when this whole thing came together, I was like, we had hope. You had set this up. We're hoping for it, and then it just kind of came through, and we're like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. I'm like the Chicago Santa Claus here, giving away Portillo's. It's good stuff.
Yeah, we had fun. I wore one of our sponsors' T-shirts as well, because although we couldn't wear this for actual game victories for a very long time, with the longest losing streak in franchise history, but they won the draft number one draft sweepstakes. That's exciting. That's something to talk about for the next few months until they trade the pick.
And they are going to trade that pick. I cannot see them
absolutely.
Saying, oh, there's no way.
It's malpractice if they don't.
Yeah. Now I'm just hoping that a lot of the quarterbacks, their buzz builds up, kind of like the Zach Wilson buzz really grew, back in the Fields draft where he came out of nowhere. Let's have Will Levis kind of his buzz just go out of nowhere and make all those quarterback needy teams feel they have to move up. Then the Bears, maybe they trade back twice with quarterback teams.
Can we get our new video guy or maybe Robert to make hype videos for the quarterbacks coming out and see if we can get them to go viral, just maybe we even take our mark off of them, hand them to other people to, so it doesn't look suspicious, and see if we can get the buzz going for some of these other quarterback prospects so that teams really want to trade up, push those good defensive players down.
Talk like Stampede Blue, the Colts SB Nation affiliate. And
hey guys, have you seen
Battle Red blog? And you got to share these. This is for your fans. They want it. They want these quarterbacks. So
absolutely, I love it. I love that idea. We'll get on that. It's a little inception or some sort of subterfuge or something. I like it. Well, I don't see why we don't just record a podcast though.
Let's get it going.
What do you think?
I just got everything shared to social. I forgot last week to share it before the show started, so at least I got them on time this week, so we're ready to rock now.
I mean, you'd think 17 weeks shows in, we would have this down, but there's just so many little things, and you're kind of, it's like, at the end of this race, we've been running for a long time, and little stuff, just are you kidding me? I didn't put that tag in. Are you kidding me? I forgot to tweet that out. I don't know. You'd think it would become reflex, but it gets a little harder at the end because it's just, you can't.
We're always learning and growing. As
learning
hosts.
And growing. I think it's
hosts and producers
tired.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
All right, fair enough. We'll get it going here. Write down timestamp. And by the way, we're both wearing our B hats. Bear and Balance. Yeah. We should probably do that.
I like that. Yeah,
it's a shtick. Okay. I have each color. I got an orange, I got a blue, and I got a white. So
I've only got the blue. So you can mix it up, and I'll be the one. And then it'll look mixed. Yeah, we're good.
All right. Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor of that fine website, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, the Bears won the number one pick sweepstakes. And they lost the game against the Minnesota Vikings, which, whatever. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a lot more about the 2022 season. But otherwise, how did you find the finale?
such a strange game. I wrote about it at the site a little bit. I've always talked about I will never root against my favorite team. I rooted against my favorite team on Sunday. This is kind of the Bill Zimmerman philosophy. He said the same thing all year. He'll never root against them unless it's the last game of the year, and that's all that matters. So I wasn't actively like cheering for them. Like, yeah, they're an interception, yay! I wasn't that, but I was like, they were just a bad football team. So luckily, they got down early, so it was no drama. And then of course the Texans game really sealed the deal. That was exciting ending. I had it on Red Zone, and I was hoping they would show that, and they of course did. So that was ridiculous how that all played out. And Lovie Smith, like we've talked about, coaches don't tank, players don't tank, organizations tank. So Lovie was going for it. Plus, Lovie knew he was gone. That Texans franchise is ridiculous. How they've done the last two coaches dirty. That's bad stuff over there.
Yeah, I think we all knew that Lovey didn't have much of a chance going into this year. I think there was even talk about the way the contract was structured was that they were going to be able to move on from him with kind of a minimal hit or something like that. Only 1 year was kind of guaranteed, or maybe 2 years were guaranteed on the contract, something lighter than what you'd see normally for a coach. Lovey knew what he was getting into. Obviously, he figured he could take the chance and try to turn it around. Didn't have anything around him. But I'm sure that those players were playing hard for him at the end because you saw that they won 2 out of their last 3 games. He doesn't want to go down as having the worst record. The Chicago tie was nice. Obviously, Lovie Smith didn't care anything about that. He was just trying to win football games, and again, he knew he was on his way out. But it was a fun story to follow. Like you said, Bill Zimmerman had TJ, I believe it was TJ that put up the graphic, correct?
Yeah, with
the
beard,
the Lovey
Lovey's
beard with
yeah.
on the bear logo. A lot of us had that as our profile picture for Twitter yesterday, and it it was fun little storyline to cheer for. The way that it went down looked like the Texans were going to walk away with that game, and they gave up the lead. They were down. They came back. They had a 4th down miracle play to continue the drive. Then they were like 4th and even longer, like 4th and 20 something. They throw like a desperate Hail Mary.
Yeah.
The Colts defender goes up for the ball, and it just goes right through his hands. And Atkins, the guy that caught the touchdown, he almost like was surprised that the ball made it through the hands because he's like, oh, here it is. And he catches the ball, and he kind of almost looks around like there was just this like, wait, what are we doing here? And then they go for 2. They get the 2-point conversion. They hold them in the last minute, and Texans get a big win. Colts move up in the draft order. There's a lot of talk about that. Colts are quarterback hungry. They're now picking 4th. Would that be an attractive spot for Chicago to trade down to? So we'll get into that a little bit here in a minute as well. I got a little teaser for that.
Nice.
But it was a fun finale for a season that went pretty much like worse than we thought in terms of record wise. But we knew that this team wasn't going anywhere. And so to have some intrigue and some interest in the last game of the season was pretty fun.
I never imagined that the Bears would have the worst record in the league and still figure out that Justin Fields is the guy moving forward. Yeah, he's got some work to do. It'll be talked about these next few months, I'm sure, by everyone, but he knows it. The Bears know it. Everyone knows it. He's got some work to do, but he showed enough. This franchise believes in him. There's some quotes out there from Coach Eberflus. Ryan Poles has talked about it. There is going to be none of this, will they draft? No, they're not drafting a quarterback. This is their guy. Any of that other stuff is going to be created by, outside forces. But I never imagined the worst team in the league while figuring out Fields is the guy. I figured if they had a bad team, it would be, well, Fields is not the guy. Fields is the guy.
Yeah, I remember saying it might have been on this show, might have been on one of the other like 58 shows that I've been on beginning of the year, where I said people were complaining about I believe it was the Sports Illustrated prediction where they said Bears are going to have the worst record in the league. At the time, it didn't feel like that was accurate. Got to give the Sports Illustrated guys some credit here. They predicted the record correctly. I believe it was a 3-win record, right? There's a little bit of that going around too with a certain member of our team that kind of made fun of that after the first couple of weeks. But they kind of nailed that. Okay, fine. But at the time I was like, guys, if we get through this season and the Bears do have the number 1 overall pick, and they have figured out that Justin Fields is the guy, that is a great position to be in.
Yep.
If they get to the end of the year and they figure out that Justin Fields isn't the guy and they have the number 1 pick, that's a pretty good position to be in too. So this idea of like, oh, that's crazy, you don't know what you're talking about, that would be terrible, that would be a disaster for the organization. I disagree. I think it's actually a really good position to be in, because the point of this year, as we have said all along, is to clear the sins of the past off of the payroll. It is to figure out who on this roster is worth being part of this football team going forward, which I think that we have a lot of that information. It's not many, it's not a lot, but that's there. And then it's to set this new culture up. And I think that we saw that with the hits philosophy and Coach Eberflus and what they're trying to do here. Year 1 of the new offensive system with Luke Getsy, like those things were important foundational pieces to have this year. And I would say that all 3 of those things were accomplished.
They're in a good place as a franchise. And it seems weird coming off a 3-win season, but they really are. I mean, they're not going to have a huge jump, next season, but it's right there for them. And, like you said, some pieces are in place, enough pieces are in place. They know what they're doing. So it's a good place. Now it's up to Ryan Poles, get it done here.
You beeping?
That's someone. I'm gonna mute myself and yell downstairs and tell someone to take care of it.
That just means more editing for me, Lester. Okay. All right, Lester. Well, let's talk about the Portillo's Trench Tribute. Like every week, we start off in the trenches because, of course, that is where football is played. And like every week this year, Portillo's has been sponsoring our show, and particularly this segment. It's the last one of the year, $100 gift card, your last opportunity to get in on this. We haven't had a lot of entries from last week. We had the lowest number of entries that we've had in quite a while. We were doing really well, and then we had a very low number. So if you want a shot at this thing, get your name in. And this year is not just from yesterday. Please don't tell me Nathan Peterman. Okay. It is for the 2022 season.
Yeah.
Your tribute for the 2022 season. So get us that where you get your Bear and Balance. Either that's on Twitter, like just reply to our account when we tweet this out. 2ndcitygridiron@gmail.com if you prefer to send us an electronic mail. You can respond on YouTube, you can respond on Facebook, or you can respond on the website. We have got 5 ways to get involved here. We can't make it easy enough for you. So get in one last shot and take this last gift card off my hands before Lester steals it and goes on a binge getting beef and cake shakes. So
I would definitely do it for sure. So make sure.
Yeah, no, they're under lock and key. So let's talk about Trench Tribute for the season. So this is the guy that you want to promote for 2022, not against the Vikings, for the season. You go first.
I had 2 guys written down here, but I'm going to go with, I think he was probably the best lineman the whole season. He had some injury issues. He didn't play the whole year. Plus, he had a weird start. That's Tevin Jenkins. I just think we talked on the top about some foundation pieces. If healthy, and it sounds like he talked a little bit today about the neck, how it's something he's going to work through. It's no surgery. Just he has to strengthen the muscles around it. Tevin Jenkins said he'll be fine going into the next season. Right guard. He's a Pro Bowl caliber player. He's still got to clean some things up. Again, we've talked about this all season long, but in the run game, he's there. He's got the right attitude. He really bought in to the guard after wondering if that was going to happen. And, I really wanted to see him finish out the year strong. Didn't happen, but still, if you look at the overall body work of both trenches, it's got to be Tevin Jenkins.
So I also had 2 names written down. Tevin Jenkins was one of them. I'm glad that you took him. I think that, like you said, he was clearly the best player on the field, on the lines when he was on the field. Now, the injury issues are going to be important, right? Like he's going to need to clean that up. He's going to need to figure out body health. He's going to need to dedicate himself to yoga or whatever the heck it is to make sure that his body can take the pounding of a full NFL season, because availability is a skill, and it is very important for offensive linemen to be available for all of those plays. Do you see where I am going for my trench tribute? That is Braxton Jones. 5th-round rookie, comes in. He plays 1,017 offensive snaps out of 1,017 offensive snaps. That is 100% of the offensive snaps for the Chicago Bears. The 5th-round rookie, the only player to do that. Incredibly impressive. Left tackle is not an easy position to play. It is not easy to make that conversion, that jump that Braxton Jones did. He held it down. Was he an all-pro? Obviously not. Was he a Pro Bowler? No, but he was a solid player that they could use, and they were able to figure some things out with him, and he showed a lot of progress throughout the season. So very impressed with Braxton Jones. He gets all of my respect for being available and being a solid presence on that offensive line that had all kinds of trouble all year.
Rookie offensive linemen struggle. Whether you're a first rounder or a 5th-rounder, you often struggle at that spot. I remember a few years back, the Broncos drafted a guy in the 1st round, Garrett Bowles, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
He looked like he was a bust, and he turned up turning out to a pretty, hold every week. He turned into a pretty good football player for them. You can go around the league. Each team has guys like this. That's a tough spot. Left tackle, you're the guy on the edge there. You're facing, the best pass rusher most weeks. He has some work to do. He's self-aware of it as well. He's talked about it. He knows he has to do this. He has to get in the weight room. He'll get in the weight room. He'll link up with one of these O-line gurus during the offseason. He'll work on his technique. He does not strike me as the kind of guy that's going to rest and just, hey, I made it. I did it. My rookie year is over. He's going to attack this offseason, and he's going to come back stronger. And he may not be the left tackle next season. They may draft a guy, or they may sign a guy. They may kick him over to the right side. They may work him inside the guard. He may be a swing tackle. Who knows? But I think for what he was and where he came from, he gave the Bears some nice stability, and there's something there for the future.
I assume that was your second name.
No, it wasn't actually.
Oh, let's hear it. Let's hear your runner-up.
I went more for a career retrospective. Cody Whitehair, because this could be his final go around here in Chicago. He's due a ton of money, 17, 18 million, I think, next year or something in that ballpark, I believe. He is not at that level anymore. He was paid that extension back when he was coming off a Pro Bowl, I believe. He's not that guy right now. He's a little older. We talk about injuries. He's been banged up a little bit the last couple seasons. I just think I wanted to give a quick little acknowledgement to Cody Whitehair, what he's given to the Bears, on some pretty bad teams, center, guard throughout his career. You never want to get rid of a guy and make a hole on your roster. But I think at that money, it would make sense for the Bears to, let him go, find a younger player. Even if you find a younger player at that same money, that's elite money he's making. Yeah. You can sign one of the top offensive linemen on the market and replace him with that. So I think there's a good chance that Whitehair may be gone. And if he is, he had a nice career in Chicago.
Yep. Okay. That's fair. I'll agree with that. I like Cody Whitehair a lot, but injuries got the better of him. He's played through a lot of them, and I think that shows in his play a lot of time. Unfortunately, you can tell that he's injured, and I think it really explains what happened to Whitehair last year. He's clearly playing through something that was never put on the injury report. But we'll move on to the tweet of the week. You are starting off with a fun one from the Ringer's Roger Sherman.
Yeah, my tweet kind of goes back to what we talked a little bit about the Texans game. So it's a Ringer's Roger Sherman at Roger. How does he get that Twitter?
Man, he was an early adopter of Twitter.
Roger, man,
yeah,
that's
impressive.
So here's his tweet. He just looked it up, and the Texans were the only team with 2 4th-and-10 conversions in the same game this year. And they did them on the same drive in the 4th quarter of Week 18 to ensure they didn't get the number 1 pick. And then he followed that tweet up with a second tweet saying the Texans' 4th-and-20 touchdown pass to lose the number 1 pick was literally the only 4th-and-20 plus conversion in the NFL the entire season. Everyone else was 0 for 9 in that scenario. So everything had to happen perfectly for the Texans in order to get the Bears at number 1 pick. And I just thought that was pretty remarkable how a couple years back, so many things had to happen for the Bears to get a chance at Justin Fields. Now here we are. So many things had to happen for the Bears to get a shot at number 1, which should, transform the franchise again. Maybe things have changed for the Bears. Maybe they're not that's going to be the sad sack, and that's a Bearsy thing to happen. Maybe a Bearsy thing will happen now. Is going to be Oh, the luck went their way. Yeah, they got the first pick. All these great things happened.
Yeah, they mentioned it on the broadcast yesterday, which yes, I sat through the broadcast of that terrible game yesterday, but they said oh, last time the Bears they finished with the worst record, tied with the Steelers 1970. They had a coin flip. Steelers won the coin flip and they drafted Terry Bradshaw, right? Like, okay, maybe the Bears draft Terry Bradshaw and Terry Bradshaw washes out of the league in a few years because the Bears are terrible in the 70s or whatever. Yeah, you never know, how these sliding glass doors moments happen. But there's that's one of those moments in Chicago history where you're like, this Hall of Fame quarterback, he was right there. They missed the coin flip, and here we go. So maybe there is a little bit of luck that is evening out over this 100-year history. I think Hallis used all the luck up, like in the 40s, and then he got more luck in the 65 draft where he took Buckus and Sayers and the back-to-back picks, and maybe he used it all up, or maybe they kind of push it into the 80s. I don't know. Maybe it's finally coming back though. My tweet this week is from our friend Brad Spielberger, and I got it here. He says in his timeline on Twitter today, he's getting tweets that are basically saying the Colts get the number 1 pick, and in exchange, the Bears get the number 4 overall pick, the number 35 overall pick, the 2024 first, 2025 first, 2026 first, 2024 second, 2025 second, Peyton Manning's passing records, 2006 Super Bowl, rights to the city of Indianapolis. What do you think, Bears fans? And it's very funny. It's a very funny thing because we're in kind of maybe like crazy goofy season right now where Bears fans have just come into this idea that number 1 pick is a reality. The Bears are literally on the clock right now. Like if they wanted to, they could work out a contract with the number 1 overall pick. If that's really what they wanted to do, right? Like they are on the clock. They own the board. They've got the most money in free agency by a long shot. Brad talks about that as well. This is going to be the most money spent in a free agency period that we've ever seen. And you have the number 1 spot that is open, presumably open for discussion for trade. And so this is an insane thing. But let's not get carried away here. Let's try to have reasonable discourse around what these picks are worth and understand that there's a range that'll happen on it based on a number of factors.
Yeah.
These quarterbacks have to be of a caliber for these teams to want to be able to trade multiple years of draft capital to go up and get them. I think that that's a very good possibility. So I think that you will see a team want to come up to number 1, but there has to be a trade partner, and Ryan Poles has to feel pretty good about the compensation, and he's going to take his time to figure out what that means to him. Does he need more draft capital up front? Is he willing to wait for next year? Is he willing to wait for 2 years? Right? Like what does that look like? Does he want players? Does he want like a good veteran that he can get to fill in some of those holes? So for example, the Colts, like, do they want DeForest Buckner as part of that? Because Matt Eberflus clearly likes DeForest Buckner. Was that part of a trade demand that Ryan Poles would need to trade down for? So the point is, like, there's a lot to sift through. Let's try to have those conversations. Let's try to be open-minded, but let's also try to be open-minded that the team trading up needs to feel good about that trade too. We can't just rip everybody off and have the greatest PFF mock draft in the world. This has to all kind of make sense. So we'll try to shape that and make sense of that moving forward.
I know Jacob has something coming out tomorrow where he kind of goes through a few teams and some scenarios of teams that could trade up. Bill has one coming out, I think, on Thursday, kind of similar article. So we'll have a lot of the stuff kind of showing, teams that can trade up for, what they would want to give, and some historical, we go by the Spielberger model for points, for draft point, the Jimmy Johnson. There's a bunch of different models out there, but I think that the most important thing here is that the fact that they're number 1 and they're on the clock now. So there is no, 10-minute sequence where, they're going to have a lot of framework of these deals made out before the draft. But then if this happens, this happens. If this guy's drafted, this guy happens. Now we'll give you a call for a trade. It's all there. They can take their time, collect as many offers as possible, really weigh which is the best offer for the franchise, and go from there. And and it's not out of the realm of possibility that Texans could trade up to 1, kind of like how the Bears did with Mitch a few years ago, because if there is one guy that's clearly the top quarterback in the draft, back in the Mitch era, there really wasn't, but Ryan Pace thought there was. But if there is one this year, and if the Texans say we got to get this guy, he's got to be our guy, and the Bears have one for sale, and you can't let the Colts get it because that's the AFC South. The Texans got to come up and get their guy. There's a lot of really wild scenarios that could play out here. And I'm all for him. I'm all for the rumors. I'm all for the drama. I'm all for what Ryan Poles will do here. And I would be shocked if he didn't get a move done early. Like once he has enough data collected and he has a good offer on the table, pull the trigger. And then now you got some time to play with wherever you go back to.
Yeah, and Bears fans, please refrain from trading down with the Lions. Like stop that. Stop trading with the Lions. We got to start taking them seriously. That is a team that's likely to be competing with the Bears here in the next few years for division titles. As Green Bay finds its way down, Minnesota is going to have this nice little 1 year fun, but they're not built that well for the future either. So, stop trying to give the Lions a top tier quarterback prospect. Make somebody else do that. That's just try to keep the top level quarterbacks away from Detroit. That's what's needed. It needs to happen here. But a lot of fun stuff to come, and we'll be getting into that this offseason and doing a lot of that kind of stuff. So let's move on to caught up in a numbers game stat. I have a couple just things that stick out from a yearly perspective. Of what did you pull for this week?
My number for a year in numbers, the number 84. And that is the number of penalties that were accepted against the Bears this season. And that is actually the tied for the fourth fewest in the entire NFL. So Coach Eberflus, his hits philosophy, a little more disciplined approach with things here. We didn't see some of the stupid things that we saw in the years past. There was no one punching anyone. There was no one jumping in there and knocking over a trainer when he's on the field, like some other ridiculous teams. Yeah, that was a weird day yesterday in the NFL. So, yeah, the penalties were down a little bit, and I think overall the team showed a nice discipline. They didn't take some of the stupid timeouts either this season. I really didn't have a chance to track those, but we saw the Matt Nagy era, how many times they just called us timeout after a situation where they already had to stop and play. Like, why are you calling a timeout coming out of a break or coming out of a first down? Like, what's happening here? It didn't happen that much with Coach Flus. So I think the hits philosophy took hold. A lot of players bought in, obviously. Probably they all bought in. The ones that didn't, they may be gone. There are 30 free agents on the roster. So another turnover's coming. He'll have a chance to bring in more of his guys, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, obviously a really nice takeaway. There was one game where they just were penalized a whole bunch. I can't even remember now. I'm sure they got penalized a bunch in a Green Bay game because that's just what happens. But I'm trying to think if there was a game that just kind of stuck out as like all of a sudden the Bears have like all the penalties and their opponent doesn't have any. And it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was a close game and it was just very frustrating. But yes, I agree. I think it was noticeable. And I think it was noticeable early, and it continued in that fashion, and that's only good. Those are the ways that you can win at the margins, and that's good stuff. For me, I think the stat that's going to stick with us is 1143, which is Justin Fields' rushing yards. Did that accomplish that with the 15 games that he played, but really only started going midway part through the year after that mini bye. He got going and he almost broke the record for quarterback rushing yards. An incredibly impressive year from him out of that. I will mention that this is the first time the Bears this is your stat, but first time the Bears defense has ever led the league in points allowed. And then this was the best running game in the league from an offensive perspective. Obviously, it rolls in with your quarterback having 1,100 yards, but David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert both ran the ball well. That was one thing that this football team did. They ran it effectively, efficiently, and they kept that up for the vast majority of the year. So it's actually kind of a min-max kind of build in a lot of ways. Like they were really bad at passing the ball volume wise, but really great at running the ball. They were good at something over here, but they were terrible at giving up all the points in the world, right? Like, so there was, the sacks stuff, right? That's another stat that'll jump out at you, with Jaquan Brisker leading the team with four sacks. That's the lowest in franchise history for the team leader, stuff like that. So there's kind of some interesting, like really low lows, and also a couple of like kind of fun highs.
Yeah, I like those rushing numbers. I think that's I don't think anyone expected to be, them to set, to go over 3,000 yards. They set the new franchise record in rushing. Yeah, there's an extra game. We get it. But still, a record's a record. It's what it is now. I thought it was pretty cool to see that happen. Would have liked to see it happen in a better season, obviously. But what are you going to do? I mean, Justin Fields, he adds that element to the game. Is it going to be something he wants to do every year? Probably not. He talked about it. He wants to get, work on his passing. He actually talked about it a little bit today with a couple of the local media outlets, talking about it would have been nice to break Lamar Jackson's rushing record. But he went on to say, and I'll quote him, if there's one record I'd like to break, that would be the passing record. We'll see if we can get that done here in the near future. He knows it. This is not who he was at Ohio State. He wasn't a run first option quarterback type of guy. He was a sit in the pocket, go through his reads, make the play with his arm. And, he'll get to that. And, when he does that, and then the offense takes the next step, but he still has the scrambling ability. He still has that 4.4 speed there. So that's just an extra threat to a defense.
Let's roll this into the Fields report. We're already talking about Justin Fields. So finishes the year with 1,143 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. Some of those just absolutely electric runs. A couple that were even called back.
Yeah,
that would have been even crazier highlight package than it already is, which it is pretty fantastic. On the passing front, 192 completions on 318 attempts. That's 60.4% completion percentage. Only 2,242 yards, 17 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. So that ratio was starting to go in the right direction. Did take 55 sacks, which is very much way too many and way too much work for Lester on
the franchise record. Yeah, the most ever from one player. He broke Jay Cutler's record, so that was not fun.
The beloved Sack Watch got a workout this year. So I think that one of the things that we saw, though, as we get into kind of talking about Fields' 2022 as a whole, was that it was a very rough start, like incredibly bad start. The numbers were terrible. Yes, there was the monsoon game and all that kind of stuff, but there was just dreadful statistics. Now you had a new quarterback with new offensive line, newer quarterback, young quarterback with new offensive line combinations, a lot of moving parts, new wide receivers, and a new offense, right? So you need some time to gel. You saw veteran quarterbacks moving into new systems, particularly this system. The book is that it does take a full year, and then that second year you see a bit of a jump or a lot of a jump depending on the player. And so some of that was expected. It was maybe a little worse than what you thought. And so from a statistical standpoint, started off in a big hole. But then if you see his progress throughout the year, particularly once they sort of unlocked that running part of his game after the mini bye against Washington, his efficiency stats in throwing the ball were really good. And the problem is that there's just not enough volume to have made up completely for that rough start when you look at the whole season in aggregate. But if you are looking at the progression and if you are looking at those efficiency stats as we move through the year, it's really impressive. So I'm not trying to cherry pick, but I think that there is more context to those stats than just saying like, these aren't very good. The volume's not there. Now, part of that is who's he throwing to? Part of that is, does he have any time? And part of that is, there's probably some things that he could have done to take the outlet or to make those decisions quicker. So all of those things you want to see progression next year. But like you said at the top of the show, he showed us more than enough that he's the franchise guy and that everybody is lining up behind Justin Fields because he's the leader of this football team.
I'm going to highlight a tweet here. Adam Hess, who was @_Adam Hess. We know him. He's in one of our circles we hear. He talked about some of the quarterbacks from weeks 4 through 16, and he went through and charted it. The efficiency, the EPA, the completion percentage over expected, average depth of target. Justin Fields was pretty much top 10 in all these things, during the weeks 4 through 16. If you chart that out, he's up there in the Mahomes, the Hurts, the Burrow, the Prescott, this kind of realm. He's a bit below those guys, but again, he doesn't have the volume, so he improved as a passer from his rookie season across the board. The future's bright. The arrow's pointing up for Justin Fields. I can't wait till next year.
Yeah. The clock starts, right?
Yes, let's go.
Man, you'll be fun through free agency. It's gonna be really fun through free agency, to be quite honest with you. It's gonna be fun through the draft. We've got a lot of fun stuff scheduled, and then there's gonna be this dead period after the draft until it's camp, right? Where it's like, what do we do with our lives?
Yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to do? So yeah, we'll go through that again. But we knew that coming in, that everything was pointed towards next year. I agree. I think that overall, as a Bears fan, you have to feel pretty good about Justin Fields. If you're not one of those people and you're more interested in some other player, I get it. Fine. Like, that's your prerogative. Fan how you want to fan. But I see that this young man can absolutely be everything that the Chicago Bears hope that he can be. I think there's enough tools in his arm to be the best passer in Chicago Bears history. I mean, I don't think that's a hyperbole there. I really do think that he has the tools to make that happen. So I think brighter things are in store for the Chicago Bears and for number one and the captain of this football team. So we'll take a quick break, and then we're going to hand out our bowls of porridge for 2022. Stick with us. All right, Lester, let's talk about the three Bears: hot bowl of porridge, cold bowl of porridge, and just right. So where do you want to go for 2022, your hot bowl of porridge?
So the spirit of hot bowl is a guy that performs, above expected. We weren't expecting this, and you kind of talked. I have two names written down.
Okay,
but I'm gonna take the guy you mentioned earlier. That's Braxton Jones. Again, no one expected this. No one expected he'd be starting. We figured the Bears would bring in a veteran. We figured, maybe Larry Borum would slide into that left tackle spot. But early on in the offseason, Jones was getting starter reps, and then he kind of just kept that job. He never gave it away. He didn't play at a Pro Bowl level, obviously. He has some holes he has to clean up, but he didn't do enough stuff where you're like, yeah, he can't be out there. There's no way. He got some help, which is what happens with rookie tackles. You chip help once in a while, you leave a back end or a tight end in to give him a hand over there. But like I said, every single snap, and he's the only player on the Bears, offense or defense, that played every snap of their respective side of the ball. So it's got to be Braxton Jones for me. I have another guy written down in case you don't mention him. I'll circle back, but I want to hear who you have.
Okay, so my first answer is a little bit of, people are not going to like it, but Ryan Poles. And now that the season is over and you look at what happened, Justin Fields is the guy they're going to build around. Absolutely, number one, the thing that you needed to figure out. I think you figured it out. You want to argue to say that they don't really know. That, again, that's fine. Your analysis is your analysis. I think they figured out that they want to build around this guy. Number two is they cleared all of that crap off the cap. All of that Ryan Pace BS is pretty much gone. Yeah, there's some extraneous stuff that's still around, whatever, but it's minor. He got all that off. He's going to have the most money in free agency coming in here. And he has the number one draft pick in the NFL draft. He owns the offseason. Now, he likely made a pitch that was similar to this when he was in interviews that said, here's how you get out of this. You take a year of pain. And then once you take that year of pain, you get into the offseason and you have all of these resources to build up and do it the right way. It was hard. It was really hard. But now it's over and you look back and you say, okay, we got through it. Justin Fields is the guy, and he didn't get hurt. I mean, I know he got a little banged up, but like he didn't suffer a torn ACL like Kyler Murray did, right? Like, so he's not out for next year or anything like that. And you have all of these resources to build this team in your image. I gotta say, once you get past all of the pain of the individual games, you gotta kind of look back and be like, okay, he did it. He was able to bring this franchise through. A lot of people aren't going to like that answer. As a player, Jack Sanborn.
There he is. Yep.
I mean, I remember talking about him when they signed him as an undrafted free agent because, you do that sort of thing. I didn't expect him to do anything. And here he was lighting it up, filling in for arguably the best player that on the team at the time. When they when Ryan Poles traded away Roquan Smith again, here's another draft asset that they acquired in the middle of the year on a player that he didn't want to pay for in the offseason. And here comes Jack Sanborn and really proving that, hey, actually, for a linebacker, you may not need to have one of the best athletes in the game at that position because a guy like Jack Sanborn can come in and play pretty well. And yeah, Poles scouted him out and signed him to a free agent contract. Yeah, okay. So a lot of fans, I think, got over Roquan Smith pretty quickly, and they became Jack Sanborn fans.
And the money is obviously part of it. I mean,
Sure.
Roquan was looking for 20, 22, 25 million a season. Jack Sanborn's in here being productive at, an undrafted free agent, rookie salary. So the money, of course, is something, there. I think a lot of us thought Jack Sanborn would be able to be a contributor to this team. I know he made a lot of the top UDFA lists that went around. I know Jacob was high on him. EJ was high on him. But I don't think anyone expected him to step in and be a starter as a rookie. I mean, he had 14 games, 6 starts, 64 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 tackles for loss. And he looked like a smart football player out there. The game will slow down for him eventually. So which will help kind of, make up for that 4.7 speed, which is, that's slow. I can never do 4.7. You can never do 4.7, but it's for his position. Everyone looks at, oh, that's so slow. But, it wasn't like he was getting abused. Maybe he doesn't have sideline to sideline speed. Maybe it's more, almost sideline to sideline, but he's a decent enough athlete. You look at his RAS score. It wasn't atrocious. There are much worse guys than Jack Sanborn in the league that are having success. He's a good enough athlete. He has high football IQ from a great program. The Wisconsin Badgers always turn out good linebackers. So I think he's your Mike of the future.
I think that's,
or at least the next few years, at least.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fun. So hot bowl to Jack Sanborn. Again, I tried to give him the nickname Jack in the Box. I think that works for a box linebacker. Yeah. I think it's the most creative thing out there, but other people like other nicknames. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine. But, again, if you're considering a nickname, Jack in the Box, that's my nickname for him. All right, Cole Bowl Porridge. Let's flip it around. Who you got?
You talked about it earlier. I'm going to go as a collective, the Bears scoring defense. Dead last in the NFL, 27.2 points per game. First time they've ever been dead last in scoring defense. And one reason I wanted to bring this up is because I want to talk about 2 other NFC North teams that were tied for 3rd worst in points allowed, and that's the Lions and the Vikings. Vikings, of course, Viking fans think they're the best team in football these days. Lions fans, of course, they're high on their team, and deservedly so. But these 2 teams have terrible defenses. They give up 25.1 points per game, the exact same each team. I think the Vikings, like you said, may be on the way down after this season of up. Lions probably on the way up. But regardless of where these 2 teams go, their defenses are bad. Not as bad as the Bears, but the Bears have more assets. They have more money to kind of, bolster that up, where these 2 teams may not. So I think it's interesting how to look at how these 3 franchises kind of frame their defense going forward. Of course, the Packers, nobody cares about the Packers.
That was a beautiful game yesterday, by the way.
Yeah,
that was a great way to end the regular season. Yeah. And Rodgers' last pass as a Green Bay Packer being that lame duck that he floated up there that got intercepted. It's just, you can't write a better script.
No.
It's just, mwah. All right. My cold bowl of porridge. I think you can go a lot of different ways with this. I really do. The offensive line had 9 starting combinations. That's really rough. We never saw the starting combination that I think Ryan Poles originally envisioned here, and so that's kind of crazy in and of itself. But I'm going to say the wide receivers as a collective unit. We kind of had an idea that this was going to be a rough group when putting together this team. You're trying to find some stuff that maybe fit. It didn't. And Darnell Mooney didn't look very good. and then he got hurt, and it was like, are you kidding me? The acquisition of Chase Claypool, a lot of people are down on that. I understand. I'm willing to give that an off season and see what happens with the full off season with Justin Fields and come in fresh and see where that goes. But obviously did not do much during his first action with the Bears. N'Keal Harry, I think he had 9 targets, on the year. Byron Pringle, like nothing, right? Honestly, Equanimous St. Brown may have been the player that played up to the expectation
Yes.
or maybe exceeded the expectation that we had for him. He got re-signed. He's a good blocker. You can kind of see why they want to bring him back. But a lot of these guys just they all underperformed expectations, even if those expectations were pretty low. And that's pretty rough. There's a lot of times where guys could have picked up the offense and made a play, even plays that are just there. And a lot of untimely drops. Again, the game that I personally attended was Washington. Darnell Mooney has the ball right between the numbers in his hands, and he drops it for a game-winning touchdown, right? That stuff happened. And I just think overall, in terms of disappointing units versus expectations, for me, it was the wide receivers.
When I was doing my notes and prepping for the show, before I settled on the scoring defense, I had written down Pringle. I wrote down Mooney. I wrote down N'Keal Harry. I wrote down Chase Claypool. I wrote down Dante Pettis, thinking, which one of these receivers performed least? And then I'm like, I could go collective, but then, I just kind of settled on the scoring. So I wanted to shoehorn that nugget kind of come full circle, as I mentioned a couple of weeks back. That's why I kind of settled on that. But yeah, the receivers, even Mooney, who was probably the best, the most talented out there, he had a down year. No one lived up to expectations of the receiver spot except for Equanimous St. Brown, and he came back. It's and let's talk about him real quick. Some fans were livid at this signing when it happened. They were on social media. They were mad. I'm sure the sports radio had their anger too, but it's like a near league minimum deal for who should be your 4th or 5th guy. He didn't play any special teams this year for the Bears, but in his Packers career, he has been a special teamer. So it's not like if he now is your 4th or 5th receiver, which those guys have to play specials, he can do that. So I like the signing. He's a good football player. Again, he knows the offense. He seems like a good locker room guy. No brainer. Bring him back. What do you have to lose at this point? He's not your number one. Depth. You still need depth guys.
Yeah, I mean, point number 1, it's cheap. Point number 2, he fits this offense and what they want to do. Point number 3, I learned how to say his name.
Equanimous.
So, let's bring him back so that I can keep saying his name, right? Now, in all seriousness, I do think that Bears fans that don't understand this signing, I think Ryan Poles knows that he's not going to be the number 1. But you need 53 players on an active roster like that.
Yeah.
This guy is worth an active roster spot. All the things you said, works hard. I'm in on him. We've been pretty positive on his play all year. So I mean, we're clearly for it. So, all right. Let's see. Just right. You're up for that. Let's go.
Eddie Jackson.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna go Eddie Jackson. Before he went to injury reserve, and again, there was no surgery, so he'll be back, ready for camp, ready to go. Before IR, he was the leading Pro Bowl vote getter for his position at safety. 12 games, 80 tackles, 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. He was back to being used in a way that he was comfortable being used in. Jaquan Brisker was more the physical presence, which Eddie Jackson appreciated because he can kind of do some of those things that he didn't really want to do, so to speak. He bought in. We saw him at camp get called out by coach, right off the bat. And we're like, uh-oh, this could be bad news for Eddie Jackson. No, he bought in. He was a good trooper. He did what he had to do. He was put in position to make plays. And you know what? He made plays. 4 interceptions in 12 games. Eddie Jackson, I expected to bounce back from him. I figured, coming to a Tampa 2 style defense, more 2 high stuff. He'll have a chance to kind of do some different stuff back there. We kind of saw him use them more in a robber role where he's kind of the upfront safety, where they stack him, able to kind of do things with his instincts. Plays into what he wants to do. I think Eddie Jackson is going to be 30 next year, but he's at that position. He's got another couple years left.
I like that answer. I actually had in the same position group. For me, it's Jalen Johnson.
Okay.
I thought that coming in, Jalen Johnson had a chance to prove that he was among the best corners in the league. I've really liked what he's done in his career so far. He came in and I think he did quite well. And I think that he proved that, week in, week out, that he can match up against some of the better wide receivers in the league. I know that the AJ Brown game got a lot of people kind of looking at Jalen Johnson and kind of, wait, is he celebrating this? And it's like, actually kind of, yeah, because he should. Like, it was actually a pretty good game. Yes, they had the one big play that he gave up, but overall he did quite well in coverage against one of the best receivers and one of the best passing offenses. And oh, by the way, with no pass rush, the degree of difficulty with which Jalen Johnson had to play this year was as high as it will ever be, because there's no pass rush and he's asked to guard number one wide receivers every week. And he did quite well. And I think that he is, once this team gets more pieces around there, is more competitive, can rush the passer with some actual pass rushing ability, you're gonna see him get a little bit more love in the national media, and well deserved. So for me, it's Jalen Johnson, a true Bear at number 33, right? Like it's a good number on him. I like it. Continues that legacy and tradition. So he gets my just right this year.
Real nice year from him. Again, another guy that ended the year on IR, but from what I understand, it was not a severe injury, but it was one that would have kept him on a couple games. They figured, let's just shut him down. And we talked about the organization tanking. That's an organizational tank move. They figured, let's just shut him down. There's no point putting him out there. He'll be back, but maybe not for the last game. So let's just shut him down and get it over with. So good pick there. Him, Eddie Jackson, the vets, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, the rookies came through. 4 pretty good football players back there. You got to get one more. Whether Gordon stays at nickel or moves outside in the future, remain to be seen. But again, Kyler Gordon, he came on strong after a rough season. To start off, he looked like the guy the Bears drafted. Brisker was solid pretty much all year long. He had some issues in coverage here and there, but again, rookies are going to make mistakes. Future's bright as secondary, and then of course the D line. They had no sacks against the Vikings, and I think last week we talked about how it was the fewest sacks from the D line in Bears history. Obviously continued because they got none against the Vikes, so they got to get some dudes up there that can get after the quarterback.
You can fix a position group in an off season, right?
Yes.
And given the resources, Poles can probably do more than one position groups, right? So absolutely, he's going to throw a lot of resources at defensive line. You do that, that makes your secondary better just in general. You have a second year Kyler Gordon, you have a second year Jaquan Brisker, you have, hopefully healthy Jalen Johnson and hopefully healthy Eddie Jackson. Jack Sanborn coming back, man, in one of those linebacker spots where he's asked to be your 9th best player, right? Like, you start to kind of convince yourself that this defense can make a quick recovery and be competitive rather quickly. So absolutely, I think there's a good core there. Let's just give kind of a final thoughts as we close out and close out our last episode of season 2. So what are your final thoughts on this 2022 Chicago Bears season?
Just the fact that where they came from, where they're heading. I mean, every year in the NFL, teams go from worst to first. It happens all the time. 33 straight years, at least 4 times to qualify for the playoffs that missed the playoffs the year before. I'm not saying the Bears are going to be a playoff team next year, but to just right away dismiss it because they're so bad, come on. The Jaguars just did the same thing the Bears did. They had 3 wins last year. They're in the playoffs this year. So it can happen. Is it likely? Probably not. But I don't think this team is as far away from being competitive as some want to make you believe. And, I think they figured out the most important part, and that's quarterback. They got that figured out. Now they'll build around it, and we'll see what Ryan Poles can do in the most important offseason probably in the history of the franchise.
Yeah, you look at the Jags, you look at the Lions, it is possible. I think that they still have to pick the right players. They still have to convince the players to come. I think Justin Fields is an excellent recruiting tool.
Yep.
I actually think that Eberflus could be a good recruiting tool on the defense. I think that there's, players that probably like playing for him, right? So there's going to be some good that comes of that. But I think Justin Fields is the ultimate recruitment tool, and I think we'll see that played out here in this very important offseason. We were talking before the show that this reminds me a little bit of Mike Ditka's first year, right? So we celebrate this because we know what happened in the 80s with the Chicago Bears. But Mike Ditka comes in and it's his first camp and it's a losing franchise. They've been bad for years and years and years. The Bears were terrible in the 70s. Glad that I wasn't alive, to be quite honest with you, because the Bears were terrible. It would have been a terrible era of football to watch. But he comes in, it's 1982, and he says, look around, fellas, because most of you aren't going to be here next year. And it's kind of celebrated now, right? Like he puts the team on notice and he's saying, like, you aren't it. You guys are losers. And we're gonna weed that out of here and we're gonna get winners in here. And that's what happened starting in 1982, 83, right? You start the great 83 draft, right? You start to see these foundational pieces and these building blocks that shaped the 80s teams. That's what's needed here. And so that number one pick means a lot in terms of what it can turn into as Ryan Poles trades down, as we all hope, and creates more picks out of that. And those picks can create more picks. Maybe not necessarily. Let's say they trade with the Colts at 4 and with some other picks. I'm not saying they have to trade pick 4. They can take that Jalen Carter type defensive lineman that they're really excited about. We think they'll be excited about. They could trade one of those other picks down. They could trade their pick next year, right? Like I'm not saying it has to be that pick that they get. It can be one of the others and start to, generate more capital and actually fill in depth. This team has sorely missed depth for years. Ryan Pace just took everything out of the cupboard that he possibly could. And so this will be nice to see if they can, rebuild that, restock those shelves. So overall, I think that I am so very happy that we are done with this 2022 season because we knew it would be somewhat painful. It would be hard to get through this year in a lot of ways, and it was. Thank you for sticking with us. This is my 64th live stream of this season. I went back and counted them all up. That's too much, but it was a lot to talk about this team and a lot to talk about the NFL in general. But I think that I have a pretty good sense of where this team can go. And again, you got to pick the right players, but I definitely see the path. And like you said, maybe things have broken in favor of the Chicago Bears for once. And we will look back on this time and say, remember that time that all of these things lined up for Justin Fields, for the number one pick, for the trade down that brought this out. And we'll be telling tales of this for a long time. So hopefully we're in the middle of a really great piece of Chicago Bears history. I'll leave it there. Lester, thank you for everything this year. I really enjoyed this partnership and bringing Bear and Balanced. And thanks for everything, man.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate everything you guys all tuning in. I appreciate everything you do with the thing. You serve as the exec producer of this show. You're kind of running the board there for us. So I appreciate you doing that. And it's been a lot of fun. The season hasn't been the funnest, but I think we had a lot of fun here. And like we talked about, man, giving away $100 every week. That's cool.
It's good stuff. All right, we'll stick around for the YouTube crowd, and we have a ton of stuff planned in this off season. I already announced with Robert that we are going to do what's called building the board, which is trying to actually take some scouting material, try to make that a little bit more accessible to all of the fans and not just the people that are super into the draft. We'll get deep into draft stuff as well, but we want to make it more accessible. We're going to do a lot of shows, and we've got like 5 guys that are going to be doing scouting. I'm going to be kind of project manager, hosting kind of role and responsibility for myself to try to bring these guys along and keep them honest as we work through this stuff. So make sure that you're joining in there. A lot of that stuff's going to go up on Second City Gridiron YouTube. We will obviously do the podcast. We'll have a podcast feature for that, and we'll put that up on the website as well. So keep following us. It's going to be a really fun off season. I guarantee you the off season is going to be so much more fun than the regular season was, at least in terms of wins and losses, because I think the Bears are going to have a lot of wins in the off season. So we'll leave it there. Thank you for everything for season 2. And until we see you, bear down.
So we got Jacob on board for building the board, right?
We got Jacob.
Yeah.
We got Brandon Robinson. We've got Robert. Obviously, Robert's doing scouting. We've got Danny Meehan, and then we've got Quentin Christo, who
Quentin's involved.
Yep. So he does a lot of nice stat work, but he's also doing some scouting work with us, and he was on the Hopium Den, right? So if you guys followed that, so I really like Q. Q and I have gotten along, and he's in on this project as well. So I'm really excited for it. It's going to be a fun project.
I'll do what I can. I'm not the scout that once was, but no, I'm there for you. Whatever you guys need, I know we got a lot of cool stuff lined up and a lot of cross promotion stuff, obviously with the sites, with the YouTube channel, with the podcast channel. So it's gonna be a good time.
Yep. I'm really excited for it. John's got Jenkins. He goes with Jenkins over Braxton Jones. Okay. He definitely showed out. I mean, I'm not going to argue that.
Yeah. I was so glad to hear Jenkins today say that it's nothing serious. It's nothing serious with his neck. And Mason West, who does team formation with me, he kind of talked about how there's a back injury there, neck injury. They're tied in hand. So hopefully these two things aren't connected. And like you talked about, yoga, do whatever you have to take to kind of stretch those out and strengthen the back and the neck area, because they need this guy. I like this. Andrew Davis's Lovie Smith tribute.
I mean, why not, right? I've got this idea that we should get that Lovie beard, and they should put it on like the statues around Chicago, like the lion statues, that are downtown. Put a Lovie beard on it. Get one on the Hallis trophy outside of the Hallis statue outside of Soldier Field. I thought that'd be kind of fun.
So do you think the Bears? I put a poll on Twitter. Should the Bears bring Lovie back? Obviously, he's unemployed. He's a defensive-minded coach. He has a connection with Eberflus. They obviously run the same, philosophy. They're both great friends with Rod Marinelli. I'm sure they know each other. I'm sure it's more than just in passing. I'm sure they've had a lot of chance to talk. So can you see a situation where Lovie Smith can find a way as a consultant, assistant, DB's coach, something? Do you think there's a path for him back to Chicago?
It's an interesting question. I think that from an organizational perspective, I think that he probably is well liked enough to bring back, right? Like, I don't think that he's the type of guy that would burn bridges or, scream profanities on the way out of town or anything like that, right? I think it would take a pretty humble Lovie Smith to be willing to do that, one. And I think it would take a very mature Coach Eberflus to feel comfortable bringing in a guy that's pretty beloved as a former head coach. I mean, most fans were not very happy when that move was made, and a lot of people harbor a lot of good feelings for Lovie Smith. So I think it would take a couple of things that I'm not sure always happens in football, and that's egolessness, and that from two men, and that would be surprising. They'll put it that way.
I think the poll I had, I think it was like 75% were for a Lovie return to Chicago.
People love
I don't think it'll happen, but I think if it did happen, it'd be really, really cool to see. And it's not like they're hearkening back to the 80s. A lot of fans are sick of that era. This harkens back to a different era. And you talked about, he's a beloved figure in Chicago. His players all love him. He's a player's coach. Everywhere he's been, the players have kind of raved about him. So I think it'd be kind of neat to have happen if he comes in like as a assistant, something, maybe assistant head coach. I'm not sure if that's something that the Bears want to do, but he obviously has the experience and he has the football knowledge.
Yep, absolutely. Number one Bears fan gives trench tribute to us which is nice. Thanks, Mom. Craigery says number one pick has been traded twice since 2001. Most recent was Les Snead, who doesn't care about picks. Trading out is so far-fetched. First of all, you just said it happened twice in 20 years, so that's 10%. That's not far-fetched in my mind. Two, the Bears are motivated to trade down because they don't need the quarterback position, and the trend is more and more that the quarterbacks get pushed up these boards. So the trend is that this is a kind of a no-brainer. Last year there wasn't a quarterback that was worthy of being taken that high, and so that didn't happen. I'm just trying to think, the situation. I don't know how many teams have been not needing a quarterback, motivated to trade down, and have quarterbacks in the draft, and teams that are motivated to trade up. Like, all of the ingredients
It's
are
a
there.
perfect storm.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how
perfect.
this is far fetched, my man. But I mean, friendly bet. I guess I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they don't trade out at one. And then if they trade back against, I mean, so many teams looking for a quarterback right now. Now I know there should be a Tom Brady move on the move here. That's rumored to happen. Aaron Rodgers, he could be on the move again. So there could be a couple veterans to kind of fill some spots there. But, I haven't done a lot of looking at the NFL draft prospects at quarterback, but there's at least two guys you could see easily going in the top 5.
Yep.
This year. So, and the Bears right now are number 1. So if you want the guy on the top of your board, you better come to one and get him, because the Texans are going to go after one.
Right. And that's just it there, right? Too, right? Is, if you're the Colts, come up and get them. I do think the Colts are just such an obvious fit for a trade partner. And, that's a team that was blessed with Peyton Manning, who is Eric is highlighting Brad's tweet here, where the Bears finally get their 4,000-yard passer with Manning's records coming over. And then they lucked into luck, right? The one year that Manning was hurt and they sucked for luck. And, luck was amazing. They ruined him, but he was amazing until he had to give it up because he just couldn't stay healthy. But that was a funny tweet by Brad. I started reading it like it was a legitimate thing,
because it's Brad,
he had all this stuff, and I was like, this can't be. Oh my god, it's a joke. Like, once I got to Manning's passing records, I was like, oh, okay, he's making a joke. But I was like, he had all these picks. I was just like, holy moly, what is happening here? But yeah, the people are, there are 3 first-round picks and DeForest Buckner and Michael Pittman, and it's like, guys, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. They're not going to do all of that. Let's see. Was this the first time in history a non-primary pass rusher holds highest sacks on a team? I don't know, but I don't think on a team. I'm sure that happened elsewhere. I think
Landon Collins maybe got it a couple years back, I think, too, didn't he?
Well, I think Courtney Cronin, I think I quote tweeted this. Courtney Cronin said that Jamal Adams,
9.5
sacks, and he led the team with 9.5 sacks. But definitely the first time in Bears history.
Yeah.
And then from what I saw, I keep putting a caveat out there because I may have missed something, but I think it's the 3rd highest by a defensive back in franchise history. Todd Bell had 4.5, and Dave Duerson had 7.5. 84 and 86, or 83 and 86, whatever it was that I tweeted out. So, see, here you go. Imagine if we got Quentin Nelson in the culture. If he just hey, what if we?
He had a down year this year. I know the Colts fans weren't very happy with Nelson, which is kind of weird because he's elite. I mean, he's one of the guys that I would always make sure if the Colts run, I would kind of watch just to kind of make sure I saw him play. But this year was rough. There it is, regress. Yeah.
I mean, if that's their best trade chip, that Coach Flus would almost certainly. We'll make sure that the phone goes to Poles and not Eberflus if the Colts call, because I think Flus might give away the farm to get Buckner. Buckner clearly made his defense go, and so he's probably salivating over DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, he had a great last part of the season. I know in my fantasy, I know no one cares about fantasy, but my dynasty, I played against Bill. Bill had Buckner going, and I had a slight lead going into, I think it was the Sunday night game with the Colts, or might have been a Monday night game, and I just watched Buckner put up like 20, 30 points. I'm like, oh my God, he's got a couple sacks. He was killing me. And I'm like, yeah, he would look good in Chicago.
What was your 40 time? I
My
wanted to
best,
do this on the show, but I was like,
my best ever, honestly, I hit a 5 flat once.
holy moly.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
It's the long legs, I think.
but that's moving. Good for you. What can you
Now, it was hand timed. I wasn't this is back in the olden days. It may have actually been a ticker time. I'm not sure if it was digital or not, but it was that's what I got.
Yeah, but your playing weight was probably $3 right?
Yeah, this was after, it might have been my freshman year of college. I think I was 275. But
that's still moving, man. I never got close to that. We got time for it. I think I ran like, I don't know, 5. I mean, like 250 pounds. It was not fast. I'm still not fast. I run like 9. I can run a half marathon, I think, in about 2 hours.
Yeah, you're
But,
doing a marathon,
But so like 9-minute, 15-second miles over like 13 miles. But the short speed was not my thing.
What was your best mile time?
I can run a mile probably in 7 minutes, but I maybe a little less. But
see me when I was in high school, I ran a 7:47, and I always remember because of the 7:47. So I always remember that 7:47 my best mile in high school. So, and then since I left high school, how would I ever run a mile again in my life? I'm like never doing it again. So I never timed it again.
When I go out for a run, it's going to be 6 or 7 miles. So like I don't really go shorter than that. And I certainly go longer than that, but I don't go shorter than that. And so every once in a while, I'll just like when I'm running, I'll run a mile a little faster. So I don't really have a good answer for you. I need to get warm up and just run a mile. I would think I could probably run 1 in 7.
Yeah. I mean, it's different. It's a different training. I mean, I was in track in high school, so I knew the track part of it. I, of course, did not do the running part, but some of my friends were in track, so I understood the different training it took to do distance, short sprints, long sprints. It was interesting. So yeah, that's these days, like I wouldn't even think to even try to sprint. Like I moved. I pulled the muscle the other day. The dog was near me. I moved from the dog and I pulled my calf. So those days are long gone.
They are 2 different muscle groups, and
yeah.
So I don't really mess. To me, it's just like, okay, I'm running. Let me try to like push my pace a little bit, and then like be able to control the breathing back. Right, like there's a little bit of that. I'm not a great runner. I just do it a lot. So, if the Cardinals trade down, do you think that increases the likelihood that the Bears trade down once or twice to the Colts pick?
Cardinals are a weird situation. They just fired their coach and their GM.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray's coming off of an ACL tear. He's not going to be available. Maybe a new regime, kind of like what happened before when they brought in a new regime. They got rid of Josh Rosen with Kyler. Maybe the new regime doesn't believe in Kyler Murray. Maybe they want their own quarterback. So,
who's
perfect storm.
Who's going to take that job for a year while Kyler Murray just like hangs out? God, that's such a weird thing. I guess the first part of that question, I mean, the Bears control the board. So if someone trades up to the Cardinals pick before the Bears trade out, like that would be a little weird to me, like, because I think you'd want to see what the Bears do and who comes up. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I don't think it necessarily matters. I don't think that's going to happen before the Bears trade down, I guess is my thinking. I think the Bears will trade down before the draft. So I think we'll see movement before then. So they get a chance to kind of reset. And then during the draft, so you're saying like if the Cardinals trade out, presumably that's because someone else is coming up. Someone's coming up for the 3rd quarterback, and you go QB, QB, QB. And then in that case, if the Bears have the Colts pick in this scenario, so Colts take a quarterback, Texans take a quarterback, and then somebody else trades up to take a quarterback, then you're talking about the Bears having the board of the rest of the players. I could see them sticking and just taking the guy that they like best right now. Everybody's talking about Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. That could change, right? You could see somebody else popping up there. I could also see him trying to move back again, because why not? But who's going to trade up at that point, right? So you see the Cardinals taking a top defensive player, and somebody else then wants to come up and is motivated to take another quarterback. I don't know if all three of those guys will warrant that. Probably not, but you never know. We'll see. The Fields here, 3 guys went in top 3, right? And so you never know. Eric, I like Kmet for the just right. It was an uneven year. Like at first it looked a little rough, because we were talking in the preseason, like we were, hey, I don't know, man. We were at camp for 3 days. Cole Kmet looks like he's going to be pretty good. And then it was rough early. Boy, that was rough early. But take those away, played well. Man, that effort, if we were going to do an actual Bear and Balance for that game, like that effort was going to be that's the highlight of the game for the Bears. Catching that ball and just fighting for that touchdown. Really impressive. Great year out of him. Great call out of you. You guaranteed that he would have at least 1 touchdown this year.
I did guarantee.
I mean, went out on the thinnest limb.
What did he get? 6? He ended with 6. A lot of fans look at Cole Kmet and it's like they look at what he can't bring to a team, or they're still worrying about the draft position status. What does he bring? I mean, is he the best blocker? No. Is he the best receiver? No. I mean, he is who he is. He's a decent football player. If he's schemed up, he can make some plays for you, which we've seen this season. He's a big body receiver, in the red zone, and the Bears didn't do that last year because they had, Jimmy Graham taking all those shots. But now that he's back and he was there, and he's a guy that I know some people are talking about. He may be a candidate for an extension. I'm not sure if I go that far. I want to kind of maybe see how the market plays out. Maybe let him play 1 more year before you decide to do anything with that. But we'll see how much the team likes him. I mean, we saw him with Equanimous. Speaking of which, I can say it. I still can't spell it, though. I still have to every time look up how to spell it. I can say it pretty good, though. But
I think it's just it works your hands too much. You just do ESB. Yeah, just ESB.
Easier.
Dumb. Yeah, a guy with a name that long just deserves to just be written out like that. Ron said he enjoyed this season more than last year. I think because it's about expectations, right? And last year just felt like George McCaskey making just a selfish decision last year by keeping those guys on, or 2 years ago, whatever you want to say, but keeping those guys on when it was clear that he needed to clean house. This was at least more exciting because it was new, and you get okay, we're going to rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to kind of see what's out there, kind of flush out the wound, and we'll go from there. Got a lot of compliments and appreciate that. All of these guys. Thank you very much, John.
John's been with us the whole season.
And no kidding. I
appreciate it.
He's got the fancy mark here too. So means he's like I think he's a member. I think that's what that means. So
okay.
Thank you for that as well. Robert needs to explain more of this stuff.
We don't understand how that
we don't
works.
understand. We just show up. We just show up and do stuff. But MP, appreciate it. I mean, #1 Bears fan's been here a whole year too. So appreciate that. That's funny, Eric. Let Lovey announce one of the draft picks at the draft.
I mean, he has that Chicago connection. He is a Bears legend, so to speak. So that would be kind of cool.
That would be funny. That would be funny.
That would piss off some Texans fans, I'm sure.
You didn't tell me this. That's funny. If you got a tweet out there, I'll amplify your tweet. I didn't see that though. That's funny though.
Yeah, a lot of times teams don't trade out because they
need the quarterback. Yep.
So I think the Bears are just sitting in a good spot here. It's going to be so fun these next few months to see how things play out, and once that trade happens.
Yeah, Eric, hindsight 2020, all that kind of stuff. I've said it a few times. I think he really regrets not pulling the trigger for Amari Cooper. I think he could have fit that in. I think it would have made sense. It would have been low capital in terms of the draft capital that would have cost to bring him in. Would have given a steady, rock solid wide receiver 1 to pair with Darnell Mooney as your wide receiver 2. Just everything just sort of clicks into place a little bit. I think it was just super early in the job. I'm projecting. This is just totally my opinion, and just trying to put myself into this position, just got the job. The first thing that comes across his desk, right? And it's almost like, there's something better will happen. And it just happened to be like that was the best deal that he ever got. And unfortunately, I think it anchored him a little bit. I think he sort of like, wide receivers will be there. And they just weren't. That was the deal of the offseason. Everything else was super expensive. All the trades were crazy. And then the wide receivers got pushed up in the draft. We have heard behind the scenes, I can't really source it or anything, but we've heard a little bit that like they were pretty much in on Christian Watson. He went before their pick, right? So, that there's Alec Pierce. Maybe they liked him, but they liked him. They thought he could get him later. Well, he goes after their first two picks and before their third. So I think that's the one that really sticks out to me. I know that Bill had a lot of guys that he sort of felt like Poles could have.
I think on the O-line, there are a couple moves there he could have done. Like I was critical of his O-line moves as well. I just didn't like how he handled it, especially after talking about how he was going to address it. He really made a point that he's a former O-lineman. Ian Cunningham, former O-lineman. They know the trenches, and yet that's the group they gave us. But like we talked about, this was about finding out who you have. Coach Eberflus was quoted in an Albert Breer article, Sports Illustrated today. I saw the quote earlier. I don't remember it exactly, but something along the lines of they wanted to see what Justin Fields had this season, and he answered all those questions. He's the guy going forward. They're going to build around him next season, and it's going to be ridiculous.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I mean,
this mock draft,
it's going to be a lot of fun. Next year's going to be a lot of fun. Eric, here's the thing. Now, I don't know this. I haven't called Patty out on this, but it would not surprise me. There are ways for you to force trades. There are with this software. There are ways for you to like make every pick, right? This was an insane mock draft to the point where they should retire PFF. You think so?
I can't see Patty going.
I think
she likes to be jokey.
Yeah, she might have. I feel like she could have done that for
possible
getting some laughs out of this. Like, I've got the. I mean, like Will Anderson at 12.
We'll have to ask her.
I mean, come on. So there are ways to kind of manipulate the software, and I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there. Don't believe everything you see, because that seemed like an insane thing where it was just like everybody was almost like there was a conspiracy to give the Bears all of the picks and all of the best players with her mock. And if that's the case, she either broke it or, she forced some things that shouldn't have happened. So, but yes, if that happened, then the Bears, I mean, it would be the greatest draft in the history of drafts. I don't know how else to put it. Dalton Schultz. I mean, they're going to have money.
Yeah.
So it's not crazy to think that you add another a player like Dalton, good football player. You could play both of them.
We'll have to see how Getsy envisions this. I mean, we've seen brought in the fullback this year, which the fullback takes some of those extra tight end reps. He didn't use a lot of Ryan Griffin, which he's not the best.
It's a little surprised, but yeah,
I thought he'd use a little more, but maybe he's just not a big believer in the double tight set. Or maybe they believe in commit more than some do. I mean, I like the idea of a fullback. I also like the idea of a move tight end. They don't really go hand in hand. You're either offense that has one or the other. So we'll see kind of how they do this moving into the next season. I think they may just go with the fullback and kind of let that guy be the move, so to speak. But we'll see.
It's not where I would go. But like, hey, whatever, like they've got a ton of money. At some point, you just start adding stuff to the cart. Upgrades at running back. Okay, so David Montgomery will be a free agent. So if my mom's still listening, she can cover her ears. But he's a free agent. Very emotional yesterday, taking pictures at midfield. I don't think he feels like he's going to come back. I think he probably thought that he'd get approached by this point. If he was going to come back. Again, total speculation on my part. Let's say that the Bears are going to let David Montgomery walk. Is there somebody that you like in free agents? There's some big name backs out there. That's the other thing, is there may be just like go test the waters, David Montgomery, and if the situation happens, you can come on back, right? But is there somebody else that you think has a skill set that works a little better? Somebody that you think maybe pairs better with Khalil Herbert, or do you see maybe allowing Khalil Herbert to take that number one role and then filling in behind Khalil Herbert?
I would pay Montgomery if the price is right. I can't see him getting a big offer.
No.
I think the Bears may let him test the market and to kind of see what happens out there. I think they have a number in mind they'd be comfortable bringing him back at, and that's probably going to be lower than what Montgomery thinks he deserves. I mean, he's a good football player, but I do not think you can go into next year with Khalil Herbert as your number one. He's not the best in the passing game. He's not the best in the blitz pickup. He's not the best as a pass blocker. And in this day and age,
It's actually
those are more important. The explosiveness is great,
Yep.
But he's not going to, if he's going to be on the field, you can't tip your hand. This year it didn't matter because the Bears offense was just like really atrocious. Everything they did was just, a bad football team. But you can't have Khalil Herbert as your number one unless he can pick up the blitz. You can't have him in there as your number one unless you're comfortable with him moving out and catching the ball out of the backfield, which we haven't really seen him use that much in that role. We have seen Montgomery use in that role. We know he can catch. He can line up in the slot. He can line up out wide. He can do these different things for you as a receiver out of the backfield, but he can also pick up blitz. He can stonewall the guy coming. He can recognize it, it's key. And Khalil Herbert, besides not being the best pass blocker, I'm not sure he knows where the blitz is coming from.
It's not good. His blitz pickup sucks. Pass pro sucks. I mean, it's just bad. Repeatedly, I want him to be good. Believe me, I want to be the biggest Khalil Herbert fan there is. Our friend Robert Schmitz is starting to try to, I think, start the train for Saquon Barkley.
A lot of
big
money.
Name, a lot of money, but Bears have it. So I guess nothing would shock me just because of the checkbook that they have, but I don't know. I mean, you look at Christian McCaffrey. I mean, so many just easy yards for a guy like Brock Purdy. Just, the last pick in the draft and just dumps it off to all these guys that just do everything after the catch, right? I mean, everything about Brock Purdy, it's been a fun story and all that, but like those are like amazing playmakers that just do everything. And he's just a point guard. He's distributing the ball. So adding a cheat code like that, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Robert's onto something. Robert has a lot of tinfoil that he uses.
He does.
But every once in a while, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, actually that happened. So I don't know. They have the money. That's the point. Literally every free agent out there is potentially a Chicago Bear. They could just put Bears with they'll put out a top 50 free agent list, and they should just put the Bears with every single player because they can, minus quarterbacks, right? Like every single player is viable to come sign with the Bears because they got all the money. So I don't know. I like David Montgomery. I mean, I don't want to. I said
the price got to be right. I just think,
of course, I could see them saying
they like him. They talk him up since this regime has been here. They've talked up him.
Yeah.
They've talked him up when they haven't had to talk him up. They've kind of brought it up on their own, in interviews where they just kind of, talk about what it means to the team. And, it would not shock me if they bring him back. It would not shock me if they overpay slightly to what, most in the market thinks they'll get. I mean, nothing would shock me at this point. Like I said, they got so much money,
They don't have to, shop the bargain bin this offseason. They don't have to look for dented cans, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't have to do any of that. They can
no void years.
They can pick off the top shelf, right? They can pick off the top shelf. Hey, can you get this out of the case for me? That's the kind of shopping the Bears can do this offseason. That's why it's going to be fun. So, all right. Let's get out of here. An hour and a half. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. It's been a really fun year. We're really excited about the offseason. Believe me, I'm going to take a little bit of a break because I believe I referenced this is live stream 64 since week 1 for me, and I'm a bit tired. I'm gonna do Wednesday. last show with EJ. We'll talk about the draft, big picture stuff, and then I think we're going to kick off the building the board show here soon. But I want to enjoy some playoff football.
Yeah,
I want to watch good football teams play football. That excites me. And we'll get back into this, and you and I have some fun stuff that we're going to line up as well. I think you guys will like this offseason from this show as well. So again, thanks for everything. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.